Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Welcome, SBI Podcast listeners and video podcast viewers. My name is Greg Alexander, and I'm the CEO of SBI, a sales and marketing consulting firm dedicated to helping you make your number. This is the weekly SBI podcast, and its purpose is to help you make your number by getting your peers to share with you how they make theirs. Today's guest is Robin Saitz, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Brainshark, a technology company delivering SaaS-based sales enablement solutions that help thousands of companies, including, get this, half the Fortune 100, improve sales productivity and increase the impact of their sales, marketing, and training communications. Robin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Greg. I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, today we're going to ask Robin to help her peers set their companies up for success by discussing how to integrate a marketing strategy with a corporate strategy, a product strategy, and a sales strategy. We're going to use a section of SBI's Revenue Growth methodology to guide our conversation, specifically Step 4, Marketing Strategy, which you can find on pages 111 and 152. If you want to follow along at home, and you're one of the few who still haven't downloaded this methodology, hit up our website at salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-reports. All right, so we're going to jump into it. This first segment, I'm going to ask Robin to lay the foundation for us a little bit. Because if you remember, today's objective is about integrating marketing strategy with corporate product and sales strategy. So we're going to start at somewhat of a high level. So Robin, here's my first question for you. What is Brainshark's corporate strategy?
Well, that's a great question. Our focus, our mission, our strategy is really around helping companies, enabling organizations to harness the power of their content to drive sales productivity through our comprehensive sales enablement solutions. So our entire focus is around sales productivity, and I have just been with the company for about just over 6 months now, and I joined the company as the company is undergoing a transformation in its business. We've been around for some time, but the sort of future focus of the company is all around sales enablement.
Okay, perfect. So that's a very clear mission. Obviously, it's one that resonates with me and resonates with our audience and something we can get behind. Let me ask you maybe one more question on corporate strategy, just to give the audience a really good feel for this. You know, I'm going to dramatically summarize the area of corporate strategy down to a very simple 3-choice, multiple-choice question. So if your CEO was on the phone today and I put a gun to his or her head and I said, if you could compete on one of the following 3 things, what would it be? Product differentiation, the customer experience through superior service, or price? Which of those 3 would he choose?
I think he would choose product.
Okay.
He would choose product, although I would definitely say service is like right there. And in fact, when we look at our solutions, we think of them as a combination of product and service. Which
makes sense as a SaaS company, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, very good. All right, so that helps us because in segment 2, we're going to dive into that a little bit more. All right, so we have the corporate strategy. We know what the mission, the vision is, how the company competes, what market it's in, sales enablement, the fact that they're leading with product with great support from service. Let's dive into the next step here, which is product strategy. So my question for you here is, tell us a little bit about the product, maybe discuss the product portfolio if there is one, what the product roadmap may look like, who your target customers are, the big problems you solve, etc.
You bet. So let's go up to let's talk about the problems we solve first, because I think it's always better to think about the customer's point of view. So the big problem that we're solving is that that there are too many companies that are missing their number and too many reps that aren't making their quota. So So why is that? And the problems that we hear from our customers is around onboarding reps, that takes too long, that their engagements with customers are not meeting the customer's expectations. So prospects and customers don't feel like the reps add value. And then reps are wasting a tremendous amount of time finding content or reinventing the wheel, which takes them off of the message for their company, but also puts the company at risk if they make commitments to a customer that the company doesn't necessarily want to back up. So those are kind of the Uber problem is missing their numbers, but the next level down is the issues that are causing them to miss their numbers. Yep. In terms of the companies that we're targeting companies that have a complex selling process. That's more appropriate for the type of solution that we have than, let's say, a much more transaction-oriented sale. We are targeting B2B companies that are primarily in technology, financial services, and insurance, med device, healthcare insurance, and healthcare and health insurance, and then select discrete manufacturing companies. And then the people we're targeting inside of those companies are heads of sales, heads of marketing, sales operations leaders, and sales enablement leaders. And of course, we talk to IT, both those that are, let me call them, enlightened IT professionals who are acting in a business, acting as a business partner to the business functions.
Yep. Okay.
So those are our targets.
Fantastic, right? So just to summarize here a little bit, so we've got a very clear corporate strategy, mission, who are we, what do we want to be, why do we exist, vision, who do we want to become, markets that we're in, et cetera. That cascaded down to a very clear product strategy. We know who our target customers are, complex B2B sales organizations, heads of sales, heads of marketing, sales ops, sales enablement, and so it goes, right? So we have great clarity between corporate strategy and product strategy. Let's now dive into the third step, which is marketing strategy. And Robin, I'd like you to describe for us things like, what's your brand promise? Why should I believe it? What's your campaign strategy? What's your lead generation plan, et cetera?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, the company's going through this whole transformation, which is why they brought me on. And I have created a kind of a 4-part marketing strategy that aligns to our selling process, to our sales process. So the first part of my strategy is around revitalizing and strengthening the corporate brand. We know we have a very strong brand, and those who know us really love us, but they know us for a particular capability. And as we transform that brand into a sales enablement brand, we need to sort of force reconsideration. So I have a branding strategy that is starting with a lot of market intelligence and working with a branding agency and things like that, and that's going to be revealed here in the first quarter of our fiscal year 16. The second part is around driving prospects into the front end of the buying process using integrated campaigns that are themed around these big business problems that I mentioned in the last section where we were talking about the problems we're solving.
Yep.
And then the third part is around developing rich solution and product marketing content. So, once the marketing organization warms up the market, speaks in the language of our customers and our buyers and our prospects, we ultimately earn the right to introduce our solutions and our products. So we want to make sure that our sales organization has access to rich solution and product marketing content, and our buyers have access to that. And then also in my organization, I'm responsible for sales enablement. So the fourth part of my strategy is around enabling the sales organization across the buyer's journey.
Okay. Outstanding. Very well articulated 4-step marketing strategy. Okay. Let's go to the next link in the chain, so to speak, which is the sales strategy. These are things like channel mix, org structure, sales methodology, et cetera. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So our sales organization is going through a transformation as well, because we had historically sold more of a transaction approach to selling our products, and this new solution is more of an enterprise solution. So our sellers and our sales process needs to change. So we have a direct sales model. It's organized by region. We're thinking about a product dimension, meaning those reps who might sell our classic products versus those reps that would sell our enterprise solution. Let me see. I want to make sure I get. We have a sales method. We have a sales methodology, and we've actually partnered with a third party. We're working with the folks from Force Management. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I do. Yes.
So we've brought them in to really help transform the way our sales organization approaches the selling process, because it's a much more consultative type of sale, and our sales reps really need to be audible ready. They need to be able to navigate the network of buyers in the selling process, and they need to be able to really tease out their business issues and focus on their problems, and almost kind of pause, let the customer talk about their business problems, so that we're able to then introduce our solutions.
Perfect. All right. So we've got a corporate strategy, a product strategy, marketing strategy, sales strategy. All right. So we have our foundation laid now. All right. Let's go ahead and take a short break here and pause. When we come back, Robin and I will discuss how she developed her marketing strategy, which she just gave you the tips of the waves on, in the context of that corporate product and sales strategy. Can't develop it in isolation. Has to be developed in the context. So stick around after the break.
Making your number is hard. Your problems are complex. Complex problems need complex solutions. Introducing the SBI Magazine. Read in-depth stories written by award-winning journalists about how your peers have overcome their problems to make the numbers. When you need more than a tweet, social post, or blog article, turn to the SBI Magazine. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com to subscribe.
Welcome back. My name is Greg Alexander, and I'm the CEO of SBI. And my guest today is Robin Saitz, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Brainshark. Today, we are discussing how to integrate the marketing strategy with the corporate product and sales strategy. We're using SBI's Revenue Growth method to do it, specifically pages 111 and 152 if you're keeping up at the office. Before the break, Robin laid the foundation for us by explaining the corporate and functional strategies of her company, which will allow us to address today's topic in this segment. So let's turn our attention to the integration of the marketing strategy. So Robin, let me come back to you. So when you were developing this 4-part marketing strategy, particularly in your honeymoon period, because you just started, what inputs did you rely on, or do you rely on, from the CEO's corporate strategy?
Sure. So, the first thing that I did was I said, who are our targets? Who are we selling to? And, there was a feeling for that, but it hadn't been really fleshed out, because this solution and this transformation has really been happening over the course of the last year. So I set about running an exercise for identifying who our targets should be. And I also set about an exercise around identifying our personas. So those were two of the big things that we did. We also, I also learned as part of the interview process and early on that new logos and white space in existing customers is really important. Certainly an objective of for our corporate strategy is growing our revenue. And then the other big thing is around repositioning the brand and potentially even exploring whether or not we should change it. But in the end, we finally decided that we needed to reposition the brand. Yeah,
very interesting. A follow-up question to this. You're a software company. Normally in software companies, we see 3 types of CEOs. We see a CEO who is a product specialist. You see a CEO who's more of a finance person, particularly when you have to raise money or go public. And then we see a CEO who's an expert in sales and marketing. If you were to categorize your CEO into one of those 3 categories, which one would you put him or her in?
I think that he is the latter. He's an expert. He's an expert in sales.
Okay.
But he's also a strong product guy.
Got it.
He's very involved in working with our chief technical officer on the product vision.
Yep. The reason why I asked that question, in compliments to him, for hiring somebody like yourself who's an expert in marketing is that, I mean, you're moving up market to the enterprise space, trying to establish a category, really, in a highly fragmented space. And I know this because we're in the same space, where there's literally dozens, if not hundreds, of software providers. And, standing out in that crowded space requires great focus and the allocation of people, money, and time, which has to come from him to you. So having you help him understand who really the targets are. I mean,
they've been very, very receptive. I would say this executive team has been extremely receptive to the recommendations that I've made based on where they were when I joined, and they've been very receptive to the outcomes of these initiatives that I started, in the middle of the year, and we are now starting to see the results of those exercises.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's now progress to when you were developing your marketing strategy, the inputs that you got from the product strategy. So the CEO says, this is what we want to do. Here's the roadmap. These are the solutions that we're going to bring to market that solve the targeted problems that we've identified. And now that feeds into your marketing strategy. So how did that inform the creation of your marketing strategy?
From a product perspective?
Yes.
Yeah. So, when I got here, I asked for a product roadmap, and that is the most important thing that I could get, is understanding what new sort of big meaty chunks of capabilities. Of course, I'm interested in enhancements that are coming in the product, but what are meaningful packages of capabilities that are coming out, and when are they coming out, and why, obviously, did we create them? So what was the motivating factor? What business problem were we trying to solve when we decided on this roadmap? So that was the most important thing. And then the other thing that is really important to me is understanding the service offerings. And so I work very closely with our chief customer officer, who's responsible for services and implementations here, to make sure that when we launch a new product, that we also understand the services that are going to go along with that. If there's anything special, or if those services that exist today need to change in a measurable way in order to accommodate these new solutions.
Mm-hmm. So marketing leaders that are listening in the audience or watching this right now, ask yourself the question, do you have your hands on the product roadmap? It sounds like such an obvious question, and the answer is so simple. Let's not confuse simple with easy.
Yeah.
If the product team can't give you a roadmap and make their dates, it's going to make it really hard for you as the marketing leader. So follow Robin's lead here and, get your hands on the product roadmap. It sounds like you got your hands on it during the interview process, which is...
I won't say that.
Okay.
But it was something that that I asked for and really expected, because I walked in here and there might have been an expectation about there's this new feature coming out in a couple of weeks, and I said, well, did anybody know about that?
Yeah.
So it's much better to have the visibility so that as a organization that is also the marketing organization is responsible for launch here at Brainshark.
Yep.
We then need to make sure all of the various functions in the company are ready.
Yep.
So just because the product is ready doesn't mean everybody else is ready. So we need to have enough visibility and lead time in order to make sure that our launch is impactful and we can amplify it in the biggest way, both internally and externally.
Yeah, and especially for you, because the fourth step in your 4 steps marketing strategy is sales enablement, right? So,
yes.
Which is all around launch and organizational readiness. Okay, let me move to my last question in this segment, which is, when you were developing the marketing strategy, what inputs did you rely on from the sales strategy? And let me react to something that you said earlier. Normally, we see something like a new sales methodology being developed. That happens after something like buyer personas are created and something like new product direction is determined. It sounds like you guys went first with sales methodology. I'm sure there's a reason for that. Tell us a little bit about your interaction with sales and how you developed your marketing strategy with their help.
Sure. Well, I would say that the persona work and the sales methodology work, the persona work was started before the new sales methodology, but it wasn't. But it was happening in parallel.
Okay.
And the persona information that we got and the target information, the targets that we identified, all fed into the work that we did with force management.
Okay.
And we got it just in time. I like to tell the board that I'm in a hurry because the company's in a hurry. As you said, it's a fragmented market. It's a fast-growing market. We're in a hurry. So we are doing some things in parallel that we would normally, you'd rather do in a sequential way. But because it's fast-moving, we're doing some things in parallel.
Yep.
In terms of the things that I needed and the inputs that I need from the sales organization in order to create my strategy, of course, I need their overall sales goals based on product mix and deal size. I need to understand those objectives. I want to get a sense from the company and from the sales organization what they expect marketing's contribution is to the opportunities. I want to understand what the retention goals are. And then one of the things that's really important to the marketing organization and to the company as a whole is the service level agreements between marketing and sales and between marketing and the business development folks to follow through on leads to make sure that leads aren't leaking out of the waterfall.
Yep. Fantastic. I mean, all of the things that I would have hoped to have heard you just shared with us, which is great. All right, we're going to take one more short break here. When we return, we're going to focus on how the CEO, the product leader, and the sales leader need to leverage the marketing strategy in their work. Integration is a two-way street, so come right back.
Do you have too many things to do and not enough time to do them? Is finding time to learn best practices almost impossible? The SBI Podcast is your solution. Turn time spent exercising, commuting, and traveling into productive learning time with a subscription to the SBI Podcast. SBI Podcast listeners get unique insight into real-world sales and marketing issues through interviews with your industry peers every week. Find us on iTunes by searching for Sales Benchmark Index Podcast and subscribe today.
Welcome back. My name is Greg Alexander, and I'm the CEO of SBI. My guest today is Robin Saitz, the CMO of Brainshark. And today we are discussing how to integrate the marketing strategy with the corporate strategy and the other functional strategies. During this segment, we're going to hear from Robin how she sells her marketing strategy internally so that she gets what she needs to be successful. Let's not kid ourselves. Creating the marketing strategy and not selling it internally is a waste of time. You got to create it and go market it inside the organization so those resources, people, money, and time come your way so you can be successful. So Robin, how'd you sell your new marketing strategy to the CEO?
So as I've mentioned a couple of times, the company's going through this transformation, but I felt like I could not create a marketing strategy without really digging into this market research to inform not just my own marketing strategy, but everything the company is doing. So as I mentioned before, I first recommended a targeting exercise so we could determine what are the right companies to go after. And we looked at, as I mentioned earlier, the various different industries and their size and the nature of their business and various other factors, internal and external factors that influence the target companies. And then I recommended this persona work to determine the key stakeholders in the buying process, their wants and needs, and how they articulate those, and then how they go about the buying process. Where do they go to get their information? What are their watering holes? What was the reaction to our value proposition? So we undertook that very early on. And I also recommended that we begin a more formal win-loss program where we go external and get really true independent feedback on why we win and why we lose. And so all of that work was input into this marketing strategy, and the CEO was very, very receptive to that. I think if I'd stopped there, I think they might have felt like, well, that's great. You need all of that, but then, what else are you going to be doing? And because I mentioned before that I'm in a hurry, I also undertook some activities and recommended activities to the CEO around thought leadership and influencer relations, around brand transformation, integrated campaigns, and then and gave them a sense about how I would measure things. So it wasn't just market research. I think that would have fallen flat. I think they wanted to see how I was going to activate that research. And then the measurement is so key so that they get a sense of the impact of all of that work.
Yeah. The key thing I want to emphasize here that I think you did so well, which is often left out, is it's one thing to do market research, understand your markets, the accounts in the markets, the buyers in the accounts, the users of the product, et cetera, et cetera. It's another thing to be able to explain to the CEO how you're going to activate it. What are you going to do with this information? So now we know, guess what? The market's big. Well, thanks for telling me that. I already knew that. What are you going to do with the information? And that key piece there, which you just mentioned, is the critical element. All right, so now you got the CEO on board, okay, and he says, geez, I hired the right person. We got a legitimate marketing strategy now for the first time. It's not her random opinion based on what she did in her last job. It's based on information that she's collected from our market, and she has an activation plan in place. Now you got to walk down to the product leader's office, and you got to sell him or her on the marketing strategy. How did you do that?
So the way I did that was I also leveraged all of this market research that we were going to do and explained to them how they would benefit from it. So they were all involved in, helping us define the questionnaire that we were going to field, both qualitative and quantitatively, for the persona work, as well as the win-loss, to make sure that they were going to get information that they needed as well. So that was one thing that I think they found really appealing. And then the other thing was around helping them understand why we needed the visibility to their product roadmap so that we could really, as I mentioned before, amplify the work that they've done. So getting that early visibility to the product roadmap and the timing of the new solutions was critically important to the marketing strategy, but also benefits them because we can then celebrate the work that they've been doing. Yeah,
fantastic. So audience, what she did was she got the product leader turned into our favorite radio station, WIIFN. What's in it for me? Involve
like that.
Yeah. Involve the product leader in the process, and they say, geez, this is really great. I'm going to get this from the win-loss stuff. That's fantastic. And this collaboration fostered, this, we're in this together transformational effort that Robin is on. So the product leader was more than happy to share things like the product roadmap and critical components that Robin needs to execute her marketing strategy. All right, I saved the best for last, which is the pig-headed sales leader. And I say this because I am a member of that tribe. That's the world that I grew up in. And when I was a sales leader, I tell you, I couldn't spell tactics. I couldn't spell strategy, but I had tactical execution tattooed to my forehead. So when the marketing leader came to me with the marketing strategy, my eyes rolled in the back of my head and I didn't care, because all I cared about was this month, this quarter. And strategy is longer than 90 days. So how did you sell your marketing strategy to the sales leader?
Yeah, I feel incredibly fortunate here at Brainshark because I have an excellent and trusting relationship with our head of sales. He's fantastic, and we have this mutual respect for each other. You need to know that when I came here, they were without a CMO for almost a year, maybe 9 months or so. And there was a real pull for marketing, what they called real marketing. There was like this real pull for it. And so in this honeymoon period that I like to call it, which I hope will last a long time,
it's already over.
Yeah, right. He's very, very open to hearing the fact that I felt they knew that they needed to do some transformation in the selling organization, but coming from a place where I had been involved in enterprise sales for a long time, my specific recommendations were very well received. So So that was one thing. And because I own sales enablement, my sales enablement team and their plan is critically important to the sales transformation. So we partner very closely on that. And then I've also been driving sales and marketing alignment discussions. I think, the fact that this 4-part strategy that I outlined actually aligns to the selling process. So the first 2 parts, the part around brand revitalization kind of cuts across the entire selling process. But the second part around integrated marketing campaigns feeds right into them. It basically feeds demand into the beginning of the buying cycle. And then the product and solution content, along with the sales enablement activities, support all of the work that they're doing. So he was very receptive to the market intelligence work because I think they felt like historically they were all over the market selling to, dozens and dozens of industries and a wide variety of personas. So we like the idea of being able to focus. I understood their goals. We got alignment around themes that were informed by the persona research. So, I could show him this research, and he could say, okay, I get that. And then the sales leaders would say, yep, we're hearing that in the field too. So we align around the themes for our campaigns. And then I've been actively gathering input and feedback on tactics that we would embed in our marketing programs.
Fantastic. I mean, those are all real concrete examples. The highlight or the headline of that last segment there is you were facilitating the marketing and sales alignment conversations. Sometimes I see the CMO, after trying 2 or 3 times with the sales leader, getting frustrated and just throwing his or her hands up and saying, I'm not having any success, so I'm going to work on something else. Without the relationship with the sales leader, which you're very fortunate, you have a great relationship with your sales leader, you're dead in the water as a marketing leader. And B2B, the sales leader is a very powerful person. And revenue is the name of the game. So if the demand you're creating through brand reactivation or whatever your strategy is doesn't turn into revenue, you're going to be a statistic. You're going to be out of a job. So you've got to form this relationship. So
yeah, I feel, like I said, I feel very, very fortunate, and he was very receptive. And there are times when I'll say, they'll say, hey, we should do this event, and I'll say, why should we do that event? Because when I look at what happened last year, nothing came out of it. So we have those kinds of conversations, and I feel like I can give him that direct feedback, just like he can come to me and say, hey, my BDRs need more leads. I'm not going to hire that additional BDR unless I get more demand. So we can have all of those conversations, and they can be very frank, and I really appreciate the relationship we've developed.
Fantastic. All right, we're going to take one last short break. When we come back, Robin and I will discuss what to do next if you are focused on developing and executing a marketing strategy. So stick around after the break. You are watching SBI TV. This is a monthly web TV show featuring guests just like you, executives trying to grow their revenues. Each month, you can peek behind the scenes and watch your peers discuss their strategies for how they make their numbers. You are not going to want to miss this. Welcome back, everyone. Robin, I would like to conclude our time together with some practical advice. You've given us a lot already, but I'm going to ask you for just a little bit more. So let me ask you one final question that will allow you to summarize your thoughts. So if you were hired tomorrow by a company and you were tasked with developing a marketing strategy, and most importantly, integrating it with the other functions, such as product and sales, what would you do first, second, and third?
So, Greg, that's a really easy question because I've just been through it. The first thing I would do is a listening tour. I think there's oftentimes a knee-jerk reaction for anybody who starts in a new job, particularly in a leadership role, to do something and get something done and prove something quickly, get a quick win. But I think it's really important to talk with everybody, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, and figure out what's working and what's not. Really understand what the priorities are, ask good questions, and do a lot of listening. That's the first thing I would do, and the first thing I did do. And the second thing, I would make sure we have the key inputs, things like targets, personas. Is our data there in order to support? If you're doing a transformation like we are, do we have the right data? What's the product and service roadmap? What's the content plan? What's the brand plan? Campaign plan? Like what are the needs in those areas from a key input perspective? And then I would shop it. You have to shop it with all of the people that you were listening to in the beginning. You need to let them know what your feedback, what you heard in aggregate, and then why you've put in place, let's say, either the marketing strategy, or in my case, in my first 90 days or so, I put in place 7 initiatives that I felt needed to be done before I could create a marketing strategy for fiscal year 16.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fantastic. So number 1, a listening tour. I love that. And what I love about it is you've told us today that you're in a rush because,
yes.
but yet
in a hurry.
You still took the time to do the listening tour, which is motivating. Next is, do you have the key inputs or not? And there are inputs that lead to outputs when trying to develop a marketing strategy. And then the last one, which is really what we're talking about today, is shop it, which is fantastic. Here's my 2 cents on it for what it's worth. And unfortunately, I'm going to deliver some tough news here to the audience. If you're like most companies, you think you have a marketing strategy and you don't. Most likely, your marketing strategy, if one exists at all, was created in a silo. And the executive leadership team is not leveraging it when they're developing their plans. And unfortunately, this causes too many companies to miss their number too often due to what we call strategic misalignment, which is simply stated as everyone is doing their own things, only working together when fighting over resources. That's no way to behave. Hopefully, Robin's example today will motivate you to integrate your marketing strategy across the company so everybody's on the same page. If you're a sales leader listening to this, which we have many of those in the audience today, go to your marketing leader and ask your marketing leader for his or her strategy. If they can't produce it, or at least articulate it verbally, as Robin has done today, demand more. You deserve a marketing leader who can articulate the marketing strategy and how it impacts your success as a sales leader. On the flip side, if you're a marketing leader and you have a marketing strategy, get in the sales leader's office. Regardless of how difficult that conversation may be, you got to force it. Get in the product leader's office, get in the CEO's office, and shop it. Now, if you're not as experienced as Robin, and you're a little, maybe you lack some confidence to go do this, I got a couple of resources for you. The first is get a copy of this year's research report titled How to Make Your Number in 2016. Hit up our website, salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-report. That's what I used today to have a structured conversation with Robin, and it's a step-by-step guide on how to do this. If after reading that material, you're still a little unsure and you want someone to hold your hand if you're doing it for the first time, you can have one of our experts lead you through a workshop, which will help you develop a proper and documented marketing strategy, and most importantly, will teach you how to sell it internally. If you want that, salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016/workshop and request one of our experts to come see you. Robin, I know you're super busy in the middle of a transformation, and yet you found the time to come speak to us today and contribute back to the field of sales and marketing effectiveness. So I want to personally pause here a moment and let you know how much I appreciate you. So thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Greg. It was really fun.
Great. And to my audience, I want to speak directly to you and give you a big thank you. Believe it or not, this show is now listened to over 100,000 times a month. And that happens because of you. Your attention that you give us every week creates lots of social shares and lots of interest and attracts a big audience. And with a big audience becomes big-time executive guests like Robin. So it's a snowball effect. So keep tuning in every single week. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to conclude like I always do, which is giving you our brand promise. I wish you much success as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.